So last week we got on this show to preview the Thanksgiving game against the Packers. And in addition to that game having all kinds of carnage coming out of it, all kinds of talking points and things that we're going to get into, everything else also happened in the last week. This has been one of the weirdest, craziest, bad luck, I guess, weeks that the Lions have had in quite some time. It has been an adventure. Twitter is melting down every single day over every new piece of news. Like an hour and a half before we started recording, we just learned Terrion Arnold's also out for the year. So it's been quite a time. Welcome into the Payne and Drain show, everyone. My name is Zach Payne. I'm one half of this show, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Alex Drain. And now Alex, without his normal podcasting equipment because he forgot it. How are we doing?
Yeah, we've taken some hits this week. But you know, a lot of people are depressed about Red Wings have lost four in a row. You had the Michigan game, you had the Lions season seemingly collapsing by the hour. But we got our first big snowfall here in Michigan. It's now Christmas season. I don't know. I'm a winter guy. That has refreshed me a little bit. So it's not all terrible.
As far as Michigan athletics, though, that the state of Michigan has had a tough week and a bit as I like again, Thanksgiving was something, but we actually, for once, we have to start before Thanksgiving because we had the podcaster's curse of insane news dropping after an episode. But thank goodness we didn't record because then that news quickly became out of date. On Wednesday, we learned Frank Ragnow was coming out of retirement to play with the Lions again down the stretch. And we were like, Lions fans were euphoric. We were over the moon because, wow, the biggest problem is the interior of the offensive line. And now Ragnow, who is one of the best centers in the league in his career, is coming back. And then we learn on, was it Saturday? Just kidding. He's not. He failed his physical, not just failed his physical, had a grade 3 hamstring tear, which is like falling off the bone. Like it is a really extreme injury. And the fact that he was just like, oh yeah, I have a little hamstring thing that we got to check out. But no, he actually can't play. So he's not coming out of retirement after all. What was your reaction, Alex, to just the whirlwind of emotions from that news specifically?
That was definitely, in some ways, it was a metaphor for the Lions season where we were really excited and then it came to an end very quickly. I, what was really strange about it, first of all, is like how out of nowhere it was. I mean, it was only what days earlier that Dan Campbell had said the ship had sailed on Frank Ragnow, and then suddenly, no, the ship is back. I mean, I was driving somewhere, and as I pulled into the driveway where I was going, I got a text in a group chat with the just like Twitter link to like Tom Pelissero or whatever his name is, and with the caption of "Holy shit." And I had about 30 seconds before I opened the tweet, trying to wonder what the news could be that would be soliciting that reaction at like 4 p.m. on a Wednesday. And that one was not really high on the list, to be honest. I was pretty surprised by that. And then there was the period of time between the Thanksgiving game and we found out the failed physical. It's probably like 40 hours in that little window where I was starting to just be like, honestly, if he wants to continue his career, just like come back next year, dude. Like this year is not going very well. If we get in the playoffs, we'll probably be as a low seed. Like just rehab and try again at the start of next season because it just felt like in some ways he was coming back 4 weeks too late to try and at least get the Lions to where they, to win a division and be a high seed and all that kind of stuff. So then when I saw the news, I was like, kind of feels like our ship is taking on water anyway. But all the same, it it's just crazy to me that he failed the physical. Like we've seen, Alex Cobb was a pitcher for the Tigers last year that was the subject of much derision in the fan base because he failed a physical after, or he didn't know he passed the physical, but he didn't play the whole year. Like he he did rehab after rehab after rehab after rehab of hip issues. You were a Leafs fan. You remember the Yanni Hakanpää saga. Like we've seen guys that are like can't physically play, like that have career-ending ailments, somehow pass physicals to get the salary for the season. To fail the physical is crazy to me. And then to have it be that, I mean, it's obviously it speaks to his pain tolerance, but what a weird saga.
I just want to know what he was doing. How did you get this injury? Like what? I can't imagine that fishing would like. Did he fall off the boat while he was fishing? Like that was I was just struck by curiosity after that. Like I want to just sit him down and be like, "What have you been doing with your free time since retirement?"
It's I don't know. We know he does ice fishing, but I don't know how you would have had that ailment happen there. So
Very bizarre. And obviously, recently, like again, like an hour ago, 2 hours ago, we learned Terrion Arnold with another injury, the shoulder injury this time. He's out for the year. I think it's really hilarious that the Lions now have two corners from the same draft that have the same problem that they are just never on the field. And
I
it's,
mean, in
I mean,
fairness to Terrion, like Terrion played last year. Like we had
yeah,
everyone else on defense get injured. He was healthy, and this seems like it's a nagging issue from this year, right? I mean, he had the concussion, but he seems to have had this shoulder situation for at least a month or two. So at the end of the day, I'm not like devastated. Like if he gets surgery and they fix it, that's I think a good outcome rather than to have it
that's fair.
continue to reoccur.
Yeah, and that again, it's a wait and see sort of situation. He should be ready for training camp next year. He should be ready for like spring camps and all that OTAs. But it's there's going to be even more narratives. The narrative last year, right, was oh he just sucks. Now the narratives that he's injury prone. The lot and it's just not a good time to have news like this when it's been so negative the last week as well. So the fan base is naturally going to get all over him. Now, we probably should just get into the Thanksgiving game. The Lions get swept by the Packers, and going into this game, I wasn't particularly confident, but I was a little hopeful. And then Amon-Ra got hurt very early in that game, and I was like, oh, the Lions might not score a single point. They at least do some things on offense. Welcome back Tom Kennedy, who I forgot was still in the organization. He came in and had a couple nice moments, but the offense in this one, pretty predictable problems. The run game wasn't, it was more potent than week one, obviously, but wasn't dominant by any stretch of the imagination. And the pressure from the interior of the offensive line once again reared its ugly head. And Micah Parsons is pretty good as well. What was going wrong?
On the Kennedy note, was Andre Fluellen the guy that would always get like signed and then waived and then signed and then waived? Like I feel like Tom Kennedy has started to enter that zone where like he will always be in the organization somewhere, no matter what.
Yeah, preseason, the best preseason player of all time still.
Yep. So, overall, what really is disappointing about this game, and this is the start with the offense, but is that if you go back to even our conversations last week, start of the game, and you tell me the Lions scored 24 points, I would have felt really good. Like, we that was the concern coming into this game was injuries up front. They had what was Glasgow was out for this game, right? It was Colin
Yeah.
was at center. Yeah, like I mean. You had Washika in. I mean, there was just what we saw in the first week where the Lions defense did okay and the offense was just smothered. To then have this game where the offense plays well and then the defense gets smoked is just really, really disappointing. Now, it's good to have that offensive momentum. They had a good game here, a little bit of a rocky start to the game, but then
It felt like a very up and down game here.
yeah, I mean, so they come out and their first drive, they punt. They punt on their second drive. They had 5 yards across 8 plays to start the game. And from that point forward, they did not punt again. They scored points or they turned it over on downs in Green Bay territory. I mean, they were awesome from that point forward. So against, adjusting for caliber of defense and the personnel up front, this was a good showing from the offense. And they didn't execute on those two fourth downs, which we'll get to. But for the most part, it's really hard to be disappointed with the offensive performance in this game against a team like Green Bay. It's just they couldn't get a stop the whole game.
Yeah, and we'll obviously talk about the defense a little bit later. With Amon-Ra's injury, it seems like he's going to miss Thursday against Dallas. That we'll talk about later. The big note then as a result is Jameson Williams is wide receiver one for at least a limited time here, and he looked mostly good as the wide receiver one in this game, save for a fourth down drop that we'll get to. But 7 for 144 and a touchdown. The one touchdown probably should have been a 5 yard tackle for loss, and instead he's able to break out of that and take the little screen pass to the house. He did have a -5 yard rush, which the trick plays and the where the Lions are using them is probably worth a conversation as well. But assume like let's say Amon-Ra misses 2 games here, Dallas and LA the week after. What is your confidence in JMO being that the guy on this offense with Laporta and Amon-Ra out?
It depends on the personnel in a given game, but I think he has the capability to. He played really well here. We've seen when they actively try to get him in the mix, it tends to bear fruits. Now, uh, there will be more attention on him with Amon-Ra out, but he's stepped up when they've needed him to. It's just been like the consistency week to week. I think he's certainly capable of having those individually really strong games. Um, and this one was one of them. I mean, outside of that fourth down drop, which has both sides of it, both the passing and the catching side. He was really, really good in this game. They got him involved in the screen game, has a touchdown where he spins off a tackle. He has, a few catches down the field, few catches over the middle. Just was electric and was really making plays. They were just getting him the ball in his hands, and he was off to the races once he got the ball. So it was a really encouraging game from him on a big stage, probably one of the biggest games of his career in terms of the exposure. So I was happy with his performance, and I think he can help fill in. It's just kind of the compounding problem for the offense with tight end injuries now. They'll need J-Mo to step up, and I think he can within reason, but they'll also need Isaac Slaw, and they'll need Tom Kennedy possibly. And I saw the Shane Zylstra clock is started. Maybe that's a possibility. They're going to have to get a little more creative, but no question, leaning on JMO will be a big part of this.
Yeah, Ross Dwelly and Anthony Ferguson don't do it for you at the tight end position. Yeah, the offense is gonna look a little weird with. I mean, Kennedy presumably will. He'll be the slot receiver, obviously, and he'll presumably get a decent share of targets because we know that Goff likes to target those slot guys that can just get open underneath. So he's gonna get a lot of targets. Tesla, I hope, gets more involved, but. He did get the end zone of this one. I was hoping for more than 2 catches after Amon-Ra did go out of the game, but it is what it is. David Montgomery had a all right day. He had 10 touches for 48 yards. Not bad. Jahmyr Gibbs, he did have 23 touches, 68 rushing yards, averaging 3.4 pop. Again, kind of have to grade on a curve. The Packers defense, though, is not necessarily built to stop the run, so it was a little disappointing that they couldn't take more advantage of that. And then Jared Goff, 20 for 26, 256 and 2, was sacked 3 times. So there were times where he seemed a little rattled, and obviously he dropped the ball on a double reverse pass, which was a little awkward. That would have been a nice play to Kennedy downfield. Overall, like it just I don't know. It seems like yes, they were good, and I want to criticize them, but I don't. It's hard to criticize them when the defense played the way that they did.
No, I mean, I don't think there was a lot there really to criticize. I mean, I think this was a really good golf game as a whole. He has the fourth down where he's on the run and he throws it behind JMO. JMO should still catch it. If it's in front of him, it could be a touchdown, as JMO said after the game, or maybe it was Goff said it. Someone mentioned it, but outside of that, he was pretty accurate without like a copious amount of time in the pocket. His stat line in this game wasn't perfect, 18 of 30, but 4 touchdowns, 234. Um, Pretty much did his job. He had a nice little scramble where he cut
The
outside
24
and ended
yarder.
up, yeah, ended up picking up a solid bit. Oh, sorry, 20 of
Yeah,
26 was
that's
the Goff stat line. I read the Love one. Sorry. 20 of 26, 256, 2 touchdowns. So pretty similar as a whole. But
yeah.
just a nice showing from Goff. And Yeah, because I was looking up what it was a 24-yard scramble that was what I was looking up.
Yeah.
But yeah, nice stuff from him. And the running game, I think probably more related to blocking issues than the running backs themselves. Like I thought Montgomery, he had the one nice 14-yard run. He also has a Wildcat touchdown, which I'm never a big fan of the Wildcat, but it worked on that one. He also tried to throw it right later in the game on the Wildcat, and it was
Yeah, that when they used it a second time, I was like, okay, guys,
yeah,
let's
we've seen enough of that. That one was real dangerous, but Gibbs had a nice couple runs in there too, and I mean, this game is decided in many ways on fourth downs. Three of
yeah,
three for Green Bay, 0 of 2 for the Lions. And you look at the offensive side of things, they have 4th and 3 at around midfield where they check into a run. It is what it appeared, at least to me live. And it went nowhere. And it was a pretty strange to check into that play after right before it, they had been on the 3rd and 2 and didn't get anywhere in the run game. Got tackled for loss. They go back to it, just nowhere to be found. And then you have a play later where the play call is good and the execution is bad. And it was just the leverage snaps that kind of cost them, but they were forced into having to execute almost perfectly because of the defense.
yeah. Now, one encouraging thing that we have harped on in recent weeks is the third downs, and the Lions in this one 8 for 13 on third down, a monumental step in the right direction. So hopefully, when they go up against worse defenses, which they got the Rams on the schedule. They got the Vikings on the schedule, who gave them fits last time. But against a team like Dallas, that we'll talk about later, Dallas have been playing better as of late on defense since the Quinn and Williams trade. But hopefully, on third downs, you can start to perform a little bit better. So that is one trend that is very good to see. Aside from that, like, is there anything else you want to mention on offense, or do we get to scalping the defense now?
I mean, I think on offense, it's worth pointing out that the offensive line wasn't great. I also don't think it was like awful. I mean, like Goff didn't have a ton of time. He didn't ha it wasn't constantly under siege. He ends up taking 3 sacks in this game. I mean, I wish he could get smoked by Parsons on one snap. Whatever, that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
They have that right side stunt that gets home for a pretty consequential sack later in the game.
Yep.
Um, the run is up and down. I mean, what are you expecting with this personnel that was available in this game, right? Like you have Mahogany not available, you have Glasgow not available, you've got an older Decker. Like it is what it is. I think compared to the first game of the season against Green Bay, it was an improvement in that phase. It gave them enough to go score 24 points. Could have been more than that with a little better execution or an extra field goal or whatever. Like they did enough against a good front, in my opinion. The other note I did have are two things we should talk about. Number one, my least favorite play in football. We took advantage of it in this game. The 5-yard illegal contact overturned a 3rd and 15, and not just a 3rd and 15, a 3rd and 15 sack. We've seen the Lions on the butt end of that many, many times. Good to be on the right side of one for a change. And then the bigger discussion topic, the Amon-Ra St. Brown Ewing theory discussion here. For those unfamiliar, the Ewing theory was Bill Simmons, maybe his greatest contribution to sports discourse. But the theory, it hatched from Patrick Ewing in the 90s of when the Knicks would play better without him in the lineup. And the argument was that something about the way a team changes when a star player is out. And I think there could be something to this with Goff, where taking Amon-Ra away allowed him to spread the ball around quite a bit more. And we've seen that issue of him just locking onto Amon-Ra, trying to force it in there. And instead, you look at the catches in this game: 7 for JMO, 4 for Kennedy, 2 for Tisla, 3 for Gibbs, 2 for Montgomery, 1 for Ferkser, 1 for Dwelly. It was a good distribution. And on those snaps where Goff had time, he was looking around, he was reading the field. And I almost just feel like it was a little bit of a it forced him to look around a little bit more. And hopefully when Amon-Ra comes back, maybe he'll have a little more chemistry built up with some of these other receivers because his favorite toy went away for a game.
Yeah, because I mean, we've seen the games this year. Like with the Philly game where Amon-Ra has 12 targets and the Eagles are ready for it every single play. We saw in week 1 where Amon-Ra,
Yep.
the Packers were keying in on him every single time. good teams and good defenses know to take away Amon-Ra because they know that Goff will just throw to him instinctively. So we'll have to see. I'm curious to see what it looks like in a game where they have to game plan to not have Amon-Ra, where it's not just like in the moment figure it out, where it's, hey, we have to legitimately like plan around this deficiency that we have. So I'm very curious to see how that goes. I will say, with Campbell, the play calling, I do just want to mention some of the like reverses and the trick plays, like we mentioned, the Wildcat. They are a little getting a little predictable, like when Campbell goes to them. So I do want to see him try to be a little bit more creative, although we've kind of had this conversation in the past as well. Campbell is very overtaxed in terms of his workload at the moment. So this is probably an off-season offensive coordinator conversation. Aside from that, now we'll flip over to the defense. Let's start with the most glaring problem. This defensive line cannot pressure a quarterback to save their lives.
Not good. And we should preface that the Packers are a really good pass blocking line. We talked about that in week one. Not as good in run blocking, but they've always, at least last few years, they've been very strong pass blocking line. But it's a real problem, and it's a problem that seems to be accelerating over the course of this season. I would say that if you um, feel like it's gotten worse, you're correct, particularly from Aiden Hutchinson, who came under fire a lot in this game. I just looked at his PFF grades just to check my memory because instinctively you're like, man, it does seem like it's been a while. But if you're not doing consistent charting, then you don't have that physical evidence. And PFF, for their flaws, does at least do the same thing each week so we can get a feel for it. And his grade pre-bye week versus post-bye week is a dramatic drop. He was in the 80s, 90s pre-bye week. He is in the 60s and 70s post-bye week, which is pretty mediocre. And obviously, his salary demands a lot more than mediocrity. So that's not great. But I will also say, in discussion with the Parsons conversation, Parsons in this game gets a huge sack in the red zone area on a stunt where he comes around, and as he loops inside, the players who would, in theory, be picking him up are pancaked, laying flat on the ground, and there is no one there to obstruct him. And all I can say is, I would really like it if at some point a different Lions defensive lineman pancakes anybody. Someone. Anyone that's not Aiden Hutchinson. I would like to see that one time. I don't, they can, the, it doesn't matter who it's against. I pancake the running back, pancake the quarterback. Do just knock somebody over at any point. It's
Well,
just
and to that point, it's worth noting the one Hutchinson sack in the last two games, the game winner against the Giants, came on a play where Ali McNeil just bulldozes the guards so far back that it disrupts the tackle's drop, and Hutchinson's able to loop around as a result. So you need help at some point. Like for as good as Hutchinson is, he can't do it all himself, and he has been fading a little bit. His win rate the last 2 weeks is around 12%, down from like the 20s and 25% that he was at earlier in the season. So there is something to be said about it. Like it's both, right? Like it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Hutchinson has no help, so he is starting to fade. When he gets help, he's going to start to make more plays because more opportunities are going to open up for him, and he can adapt on the fly mid-play when Aleem pushes a guy back, or when Al-Qadin, if he ever decided to do anything like he did at the start of the season, could force the QB to run out of the pocket.
Yeah, it's kind of with Muhammad, you kind of wonder like, he's like a toy where you bought it and then it had a battery life and now the battery's dead. Like we used the toy too much early in the year, now the battery's gone. I don't know, just kind of wonder about that from his standpoint. If he's been figured out or whatever he had going on early in the year, maybe the time's up a little bit on that. McNeil, it's tough because he came back. He had that first game which was the Buccaneers game, right? And he looked really good in that one, surprisingly good considering the injury and the layoff. And then, like everyone else, it just hasn't been there necessarily in the second half of the year. And I wasn't really expecting it to be, but
When
the
no one else is doing anything, it stands
yeah,
out more.
the state of everything else has necessitated him to be better. He did have a pressure on that fourth down, like the only time he was notable all game. Right at the end of the game, he drives the guard right back into Love, and then you know, he
Back
just
foot, fade away.
back foot, and Wicks goes up and gets it. It is what it is. But McNeil definitely not a star right now. And then you're not getting anything out of Tyleik Williams. You're not getting anything out of Reeder. The other edge spot is the black hole we thought. And then the biggest thing to me is their blitzes are just not getting home whatsoever. Like not even scratching the surface, just locked up. And those,
Yeah,
Campbell, Anzalone, I mean, the blitz pickups from Green Bay were phenomenal in this game.
yeah, but there's also like the Lions blitzes haven't been good for a while now, it feels
Yeah,
like.
for a
So
few weeks. Yeah, for sure.
so that's prompted Kelvin Shepherd. He spoke today or yesterday and said that there are going to be schematic changes that the Lions implement to try and generate more pressure. But he also said that at some point the guys just have to play better. We'll see how that materializes. I don't even know like what I never like to hear a defensive coordinator say this late into the season, we have to change the scheme. So we'll see what happens there, but you've probably had your worst 2 weeks as a defense, back-to-back weeks. It is so bizarre because this applies to the offense and the defense, how the healthier each unit is, the worse they perform. I don't know what the psychology is with that, if they're just getting too high on themselves or what. But the defense, when they were playing with the Legion of Whom, were unbelievable. And as they've gotten healthier, they've just continuously gotten worse and worse. So I don't know because the Kelvin Shepherd, we've praised him a ton earlier in the season. So we also have to criticize him when things are going poorly. He's got to get his unit under control because you got to figure it out. I like there's no two ways about it. You can't rush the passer. The D line is getting blown off the ball in the run game. The linebackers are overtaxed. They can't do literally everything. And you're having results like this where you give up a ton of yards to the Giants, you give up a ton of points to the Packers, and you're bleeding late into the season and into December now.
Yeah, I mean, this game in many ways, I'm a big football's won in the trenches guy. Was that any more on display in this game than any game this year? Like the Lions did nothing in the trenches on defense. Offense, they were never going to win that battle. I mean, they pushed it as close to parity as they could, um, and they got blown out on the other side. And the Lions have put in a lot of assets to this side of the ball, defensive line in particular, and it's not good enough right now, and it's not bearing fruits in either phase. And you have a long Josh Jacobs run in this game, which let me look at I think it was 29 yards is what the box score says here, where they give up the edge. We've talked about that week after week. And this is something that claims to be a big, deal for the Lions. Like the run defense is what they want to be so good at. And honestly, when you look at the run defense, and we haven't talked about it as much, but it's really been the linebackers holding this group up. Like the linebackers, Campbell in particular, have been so awesome slashing down and wrapping up ball carriers after they get through the first line of defense, because the first line of defense hasn't really been stuffing frequently this season, especially as of late. And so there's just a bit of irony to me where they prioritize edge setting and run defense so much, especially among their edges, to the detriment of their pass rush. And yet here we are, and they can't set the edge whatsoever. And it's a sloppy unit right now. The coverages aren't great, but at the same time, coverage isn't never going to hold up forever when there's in
Yeah,
unlimited amount of time.
well, and that's what Shepard was saying in his media availability this week is it doesn't matter what coverage you call, it doesn't matter what kind of defense you want to play in the secondary. If you can't get pressure, you can't do anything. And that's kind of where the Lions fall right now. Like remember like back in week 3, the Lions when they were just teeing off on Lamar Jackson. I cannot believe that that happened this season now looking back with the state of where this defense is right now. It's pretty shocking how bad things have gotten on this side of the ball. And there's no like you're going against a good Dallas offense this week, so that'll be fascinating. You got to figure it out. You got to figure it out. And so another thing that's happened over the last few weeks that we should talk about with the coverage. I know kind of a weird because there's been no pressure. Amik Robertson has randomly just stopped being good at football after DJ Reed came back. I don't know what happened there, but ever since Robertson's been back in the slot, like I think Robertson might have to be a permanent outside corner at this point because he is just not as good in the slot anymore.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to Robertson, to be honest with you. Um, just he's had some tough matchups these last few weeks. I mean, obviously the Vikings game, he was with Justin Jefferson because of some of the injuries there. In theory, it should have gotten easier with DJ Reed and Arnold coming back, but he's been cooked these last few games. And that's the tough part because otherwise, coverage it wasn't great in this game, but it this was the Packers. Like
Yep.
this is the game where, as I mistakenly read, the correct stat line for Love was 18 of 30. That's not like incredible completion percentage, but as we always talk about with the Packers, they get the big plays, and they got the big plays on the long touchdown to Watson. The other touchdown that there was a little bit of some dispute about the ball and was it bobbling, which we'll probably talk about later. But they hit that one, which again, that was a mystifying play. Why did
Yeah.
Brian Branch stop running? I mean,
He turned
he said
he turned around too early and then he just stopped moving, I guess.
he said today he was looking back to find the ball and he didn't see it, and he just I don't know, that was so weird. Like they weren't far away from covering some of these, but then the end of the day they didn't fully do it. They didn't fully execute. And that cost them. And they get the two fourth downs, one of which again is a great play with Wicks going up and getting it. It is what it is, but
It felt
it's
like
the big stuff that kills you.
it felt like the inverse of those games last year where the Lions won both games against Green Bay last year on the backs of those fourth downs. This year it was the opposite on Thanksgiving where mostly an even game, but the Packers executed more when it mattered, and that's your ball game. It's sometimes it is that simple.
Yeah, I don't think I think the fourth downs really speak for themselves. And at the end of the day, um, they didn't get stops. They force a field goal on that first drive, which was a decent defensive stand, and then they basically don't do anything the rest of the game. I think they forced one punt later on, where they got away with a pretty blatant DPI on Amik Robertson. Whatever, we'll take it, but it wasn't exactly again a great evidence of anything from the standpoint of the defense. And I looked at these stats the other day and I sent you this, but we talk about what Dan Campbell wants to do. He wants to get takeaways, wants to get sacks, the big plays. That's always been the one of the biggest objectives of this defense. And the last few games, neither are happening.
Yeah, you have one
So
interception against Jameis Winston, which is kind of a prerequisite. And what else have they done to force turnovers the last few games?
they have two since the bye week, I believe. The one
And
on
the
JJ and the one on
Yep.
Jameis. That's it.
And the one on
That's
JJ
five
is kind of
games.
more of the one against JJ is more of a hustle play than a than anything
Yeah.
because it was just a throw behind the receiver. It's and it goes back to pressure, man. If you when you force more pressure, you force more mistakes, you can get strip sacks, you can force poor decisions. The defense is
And
just a lifeless shell right now.
and in sacks, two of them, the last three games. One of which required an extra session to be recorded.
Yep.
Zero in a 60-minute game against the Giants. I mean, it's just they're not creating havoc and they're not stopping the opponent from moving down the field. These last 2 weeks have been ugly, ugly stuff, and it adds up. We have the Al Karsten tweet from again the one that I sent you right after the game, which is these are their stats over the last 5 games, which is since the bye week. 25th in passer rating allowed, 102.6.
Yikes.
23rd in EPA per play, minus
Yikes.
0.05. 20th in sack rate, 6%. 28th in turnover rate, 0.6%.
That's the one. Like it feels like this team this season especially has just drifted so far away from what Campbell is trying to do, and it's very bizarre. Like there's no other
Yeah.
explanation. It's just weird. Like I don't know how this team has gotten so far away from the brand of football that Dan Campbell's trying to get them to play. And they're at the point now where they're basically relying on high-end skill position players to win out some one-on-ones because down to down, this team is losing consistently.
Yeah, and I think you look at this game and really the season, and the thing I think about the most looking back is how we showed up to the some of the first episodes of the season. We looked at the preseason games, and out of nowhere, with the same personnel, the Lions special teams was randomly terrible in the preseason. And it continued in week one. And I know it doesn't affect defense, doesn't affect offense, but it was like the first harbinger that just something is off for no real reason, but just something in the execution and the preparation of this team is not where it used to be, and it's not where it needs to be. And now they are in a lot of trouble. And we'll talk about the playoff picture after the next segment, but it's dicey now. But you can't say they don't really deserve it.
No, and look, fair is fair. Dan Campbell deserves to wear a lot of this too, because going back to last season, 15 and 2, he admitted that he had the team focused way too much on the one seed and not on the ultimate goal, and they might have overlooked Washington and they might have not necessarily been in the right headspace. And you come into training camp and it doesn't feel like there's been an adequate like I thought that would have been easy for him to be like, look, it does like we lost in the playoffs, we got embarrassed. Let's get back on the horse here and figure things out. And it kind of feels like this team mentality wise just hasn't been up to snuff the way that it has the last couple of regular seasons at very least.
It's just really disorienting when the hallmarks of the Dan Campbell era are not working. That usually you've come to expect preparation, you've come to expect execution, you've come to expect the team to be able to run the ball in short yardage. You've come to be able to expect them to be able to get the 3rd and 6 run for the first down, right? All this different stuff that we've seen for different reasons have been taken away from us, but some of that's personnel, but then the biggest stuff is coaching, and that falls at his feet. And it's across the full staff, and they've got to get better. The team's got to get better. I don't, and they're running out of time, and that's the toughest part. We kind of talked about this with the young offensive line. How much time do they really have to grow up as the season starts to run thin? And here we are with a short week, which obviously for them it's a full week with the Thursday to Thursday, but this upcoming game kind of feels like it's the season. Like if they lose to the Cowboys,
I think
it's
every
pretty
game the
much
rest of the
over.
way, I think
Yeah.
that's going to apply to the Lions are pretty much like they can maybe afford to lose one game against the Rams, we'll say, but they really don't have any more. You're probably going to have to win 11 games to get into the playoffs, which it's a high bar, yes, but yeah, that's the state of things.
And I don't know if this is the right point to put this in, but there's been talk about there's been more fire at Holmes coming the last few days since the Thanksgiving game. Not as much at Campbell's direction, but some of it. And I think definitely when you look at the team, not all of it's incorrect. Um,
No.
Particularly from Holmes' standpoint. Right now, bar none, the biggest story with this team and where they're at is that they don't have much of anything from their last 2 draft classes positively contributing. They have some players that are contributing in an average capacity, and I think for both guys, it's not necessarily a bad thing, and that would be Tyleik Williams and Tate Ratledge. I think Tyleik nose tackles, as we know, take some time in the NFL. And Ratledge is a rookie guard, and I think as a whole has been okay. I'm not like furious or anything, but neither of those guys are like the Branch Laporta tier where they're just
No.
like instantly Pro Bowlers as starters. And again, I don't think that was ever reasonable to expect for a guard drafted 60th or whatever and a nose tackle. But that's that. And then the 24 class in particular, where you have Terrion, who's been in and out of the lineup and is kind of mid when he plays. And then the Rakestraw situation, where through 2 seasons you've gotten nothing out of him. You have what Sione Vaki is in there, which is one of those picks that's begging some questions. You have
Giovanni Manu.
Giovanni Manu in there that's begging some questions. And it just kind of feels like looking back, and this applies to Tisla as well, although I do think there's more to get out of Tisla, and he showed some of it in this game with a touchdown for just this season, is that you kind of wish, looking back, that you would have taken the project picks when they had like 11 selections in those first couple drafts. Because you're not expecting to be good right away. You've got some extra picks to burn. And I don't know why through those first three drafts, there were very few. Broderick Martin was the one of that sort of style of this guy probably won't help us for a few years. And now all of a sudden we're getting a few of them in these last couple drafts right at the point at which having useful young talent to fill in the gaps with rising salaries would have been really, really useful. And that does feel like a bit of an error. And I'm not saying it's over. Some of these guys obviously can get better moving. Oh, this season might be over, but I'm
Yeah.
saying in the longer term,
Yeah.
certainly it's possible for Rakestraw or Terrion to find their way back, and Ratledge and Tyleek and other guys to grow and contribute, and maybe Miles Frazier, Mahogany, someone else blows up down the road. That's all possible. But right now it's not enough. And as this roster looks towards the next season, the 26 draft is really important. I'm not a believer in, and I tweeted about this a couple weeks ago because I had seen some people talking about the Lions Super Bowl window and is it closed?
Yeah.
I don't I don't believe in windows in that sense in the NFL. Obviously, the window is closed if you don't have a quarterback or something like that happens and you're in a full scale rebuild. But the LA Rams crashed and burned only a few years ago. We remember because we got their first round pick because of it. That's how we got Jahmyr Gibbs. And then even the next year when they came back and lost to the Lions in the playoffs, I wasn't really thinking they were imminently about to be a juggernaut again. But what happened? They nailed a couple drafts. Look at their defense. Those are all new players. They were not on the Super Bowl winning team of a few years ago. Even the offensive line got rebuilt. They went out and drafted stars across the board over two or three drafts, and they replenished the team. And we've seen the Lions have the capacity to do it, but they're probably going to need to get back to doing that next year because these last couple drafts haven't been up to the standard. And that's a huge part of why they're here.
They're gonna have the heat is definitely, well, not heat maybe. The pressure is definitely turned up for Brad Holmes this offseason. And with his drafting, like we'll talk about this more in the offseason, but I have such a love-hate relationship with it because I almost feel like his strategy should be employed in reverse, where he should probably take the shots on the higher upside players earlier in the draft, like first, second round, when those players have decent enough floors to begin with, and then take some more high floor players later in the draft that can contribute in meaningful ways rather than essentially burning picks on lottery tickets is what it feels like. The third and fourth rounds have been the last few years. So we'll see what happens. That again, that's more of an off-season conversation on Holmes, but the vision of Holmes and Campbell definitely needs to be reinforced in the offseason. Getting back to this game, though, we still have to wrap up this. In terms of the game theory and ref talk, what do you have for this part? I know ref
Um,
talk was a big thing for everyone online, so
it was a story of this game. There's no question about it. But this was the kind of game that by the end of it, I was like, I don't really care about the ref talk. Like this,
yeah.
they made enough mistakes themselves that they deserved the outcome they got. But you have the Green Bay touchdown review controversy. It kind of looked like he was bobbling it a little bit. I don't know if I would have overturned that though. It's kind of on the borderline to me, and I think I'd
Yeah.
prefer to just leave the call on the field. Also, again, Brian Branch was in perfect position and stopped playing. So, like, we're talking about should the Lions have gotten a massive bailout? And maybe, but in morally, no. They deserve to give up
Yeah.
that touchdown. But that was one story. The other one, though, much more questionable, was the timeout on
Well,
the
much more like definitively this was the wrong call because the replay showed that Matt LaFleur was covering his face with the play sheet when the false start occurred and then called for a timeout after. And even after the game, like he was being like kind of sarcastic with the media and being like, "Whoa, I called the timeout," like whatever. But look, bad calls happen. And we should clarify, we are not in any way, shape, or form blaming the officials for the results on the field. The fact of the matter is the refs just make bad calls all the time, and they make bad calls both ways. We mentioned the missed DPI against Watson from Amik Robertson earlier. Bad calls happen all the time, but we still have to talk about them when that is a huge talking point of the fan base coming out of a game.
Yeah, and that one seemed like a pretty wrong call. Now, obviously, we don't have everyone mic'd up to be able to tell when exactly the timeout was asked for and that kind of thing, but just watching the body language, it seemed implausible for that timeout to have been before the false start. Also, the Lions in that same sequence put 12 men on the field, and that turned a 3rd and 7, then into a 3rd and 2 inside their own 10. I mean, that's the execution stuff we're talking about. You had an offsides from Reeder on a 3rd and 4. You have a Jack Campbell face mask on a 3rd and 1.
That one was broke because it wasn't even a run play. It was a face mask in coverage. Very rare
Yeah, and he got his
penalty there.
money's worth. I mean,
Oh
he
yeah.
grabbed it and tugged. So that can't say it was a bad call, but that's just bad stuff from the Lions, shooting themselves in the foot. Um, Otherwise, I didn't think there was a ton of other ref stuff in my notes. Green Bay also fumbled inside the 10 and then got it right back, which was kind of, I don't know, just was like, man, that was the break we needed sort of thing. And then they didn't get it. So that was unfortunate. Otherwise, special teams, Bates hit from 31, Fox 2 punts. One wasn't particularly good. The other one was mediocre. Not a ton else to say there. And then the 2 4th downs, this was a point of contention among some watching the game. The Lions go on the 2 4th and 3s. How do you feel about altering 4th down decision making when the offense is kind of struggling on these downs? Because I believe they're now 0 for their last 7 on 4th down.
Sure, I will revisit a conversation we had after the Eagles game. Kicking field goals in those situations would not have helped you win the game. You would have lost anyways. At least they went for the win. And
I
sometimes you just gotta go. Like sometimes you gotta just like you just gotta get one, and then maybe you get the tires spinning again. They're just in a rut.
I've just been at a loss, honestly, with this because I'm usually pretty consistent about the decision making, and being a go for it guy. And yet in this game, I was starting to lean towards at least the one in the 4th quarter where it was 31-21, where JMO drops the pass. Being a 2 score game, I was honestly leaning towards kicking there, and it was just because I was in a total lack of faith. Obviously, if it's a 1 score game and the field goal doesn't do anything, then I would go for it. But where you get some utility out of a field goal, I was leaning towards kicking because I just feel like the offense at this point, I have so little faith in their ability to pick these up right now. Like
I
I
think
need
what
to see
kills
a
me,
couple go right for me to be comfortable.
what's been killing me is that the 4th downs, everything about it seems so right, and then at the last second something will go wrong where it's like, oh, there's a guy open, drop, or there's a guy open, inaccurate throw, or like the run will get us and just get stuffed like right there. It's so uh, it's it's a lot easier to pick them apart, obviously, when they fail. At the same time, though, like this is Dan Campbell's process, and you live by the sword, you die by the sword.
At the very least, it's the one part of the identity we haven't lost. The problem is we
Yeah.
lost the part where we picked them up.
We lost the part where it was working.
So
Yeah.
now, I mean that's about all I have on this game, but we should talk about the playoff picture now.
Well, and we'll start by talking about what happened on Friday, which surprised a lot of people. The Chicago Bears beat the Philadelphia Eagles in Philadelphia by multiple scores and are now on top of the world. They are currently, are they the one seed in the NFC right now? The Chicago Bears are the one. Yeah, they have the tiebreaker
Yep.
over LA. So the Chicago Bears are the one seed in the NFC through 13 weeks of football. I hate everything.
So there was a lot of conversation about Ben Johnson and, how the Lions let him get away and all this stuff after the game. And
let
Here's
him
what
get
I'm
away.
saying.
What, like, how are you going to keep him?
Go look at the guys on the Bears offensive line. Go look at the money they spent in the offseason to go and get several veteran linemen to go in there and help out. Like it's not like the Lions, under Ben Johnson were doing one thing, right? They were a running team and now they're running the air raid or something. Like it's functionally they're still trying to do the same things and maybe play calling is clunkier, but like what was the other than the trick plays, the defining Ben Johnson thing? It was the 3rd and 7 runs to set up the 4th and 3. And I had someone mention, which I thought was a good point. Remember when they ran it on 4th and 5 against the Chargers and picked it
Yep.
up?
Yep.
That was Ben Johnson. You think that's working this year? Like, I think he would be better than Johnny Morton because
He's more creative and yeah.
that statement speaks for itself largely. But would he have the same success as he had here previous as he did last season with this personnel? I don't think so. Like there are very inherent problems that are with this offense that are explained by uh, the personnel, and at the same time, the Bears have a rookie quarterback, and that's the luxury you can afford is to spend on the line. It's given him the personnel he needs, and congratulations, they won their first
Real game.
decent win of real game of the year. We'll see if they win anymore. I mean,
We'll see.
and are the Eagles real? Like that's the other thing is that they beat the
Is
Eagles, but
anyone
like
real?
the Eagles last 3 weeks, a game where they begged the Detroit Lions to beat them, and the Lions declined. Epic choke in Dallas, and now this. I mean, it's hard not to get the vibes of 2 years ago with the Eagles, where like they start the year strong, and then the middle of the year into December, it starts kind of unraveling a little bit because they look like, especially on offense, they look like a mess right now.
I'm not gonna lie, this has got to be the weirdest year in the NFL where so many teams have really good records and so many no one feels real. The Rams were feeling real, but then they just lost to the Panthers and Stafford finally looked human again. So we'll see how they bounce back from that. I like looking at the 14 teams currently in a playoff spot, I could not tell you who's going to win the Super Bowl. This has got to be this is the most wide open year I think we've had in a while, especially if the Chiefs in fact miss the playoffs, which would be hilarious. It's been a very dumb year, but as it pertains to the Lions, the Bears winning is relevant because the Lions also got no help from anyone really this weekend, which was unfortunate. But the Lions are now a game and a half back of Green Bay. They're 2 games back of San Francisco, or I guess San Francisco has their bye week, but the Lions are 7-5. The Niners are the 7th seed at 9-4 right now. We mentioned a little bit ago, the Lions are going to need to win 11 games, and honestly, 11 wins might not even get them in the playoffs this year.
That's the tough part. This is a really crowded playoff picture for the NFC this year. A high bar to get in. We've seen years where you can get in at 9-8. That's not this year. The
Unless you're in
Lions
the
don't
NFC
play,
South.
or you're in the AFC North. One of
Yeah.
it's there's some humor in that like the historically one of the most competitive divisions is this year's coughing baby division. But anyway, it's just it's so unfortunate because this is the year where if the Lions, even the 23 Lions team could be, which I thought had serious flaws on defense. I have been on this podcast saying I did not feel good about their chances if they had held on in the NFC title game, at least in the Super Bowl. But they could be the best team in this conference. Like the team last year, even with the injuries, maybe could have been the best team in this conference. Like that's the single biggest reason for like hope or whatever is like, why would you want to get the 7th seed? The reason is it's a weak enough field that you could, in theory, go on a run.
Yeah. So, because as it stands right now, if the Rams get the 1 seed, let's say, you're playing either the Bears or the Eagles, maybe the Packers, if you're the 7th seed. Well, 2 of those teams, the Lions have proved that they are probably able to beat the Packers, maybe not with the defense. It would take a better effort. I don't know, but there's no one. This is the most tantalizing thing about the Lions this year is the Lions, and I still believe this right now. The Lions can beat anyone in the league. They could also lose to anyone in the league. The Lions have the widest range of outcomes in all of football right now, and it's very strange.
Yeah, I feel like there's the sort of inside you there are two wolves situation where there's part of me that is like, yeah, you could get the seventh seeding, maybe go on a run. And there's another part of me that's like, you know what? I wouldn't. It doesn't feel like they have it this year. Just the vibes have been bad for a little while now, basically since the bye week. I wouldn't hate it if they kind of tumbled and you get like the 14th pick in the draft to then get, a franchise tackle or an edge rusher or something to really solidify at a big position of need, some things moving forward. And I think my position on which I would like to see will hinge entirely on the results of Thursday night's game.
Yeah, which obviously is a big one. But before we get to that, we do have to recap at least a little bit else of what happened in Week 13. Speaking of those Dallas Cowboys, they defeat the Kansas City Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs season is now on life support. That's 6-6. They also probably need to win at least 11 games to get into the playoffs, which means they have to win out, and they still have games against the Broncos and who we'll talk about that in a second, and the Chargers who beat them earlier this year. The Chiefs might miss the playoffs.
We never thought we'd see this day. It's
And
I
the
mean,
Cowboys.
it's a really interesting close to the year. Like you have the Titans and Raiders game, which you imagine are layups, but Texans, Chargers, Broncos, the upside is they're all at home. It's totally possible to see this. No one would be surprised if the
No.
Chiefs run the table at home and then win against two turkeys and then on the road. So it's right there, but those are teams that are Chargers. I don't know, they might be unserious, but Texans are playing well right now. Broncos are what, 10-2, something like that. I mean,
They've just got some weird devil magic going this year.
yeah. So it's one of those things where everyone in the AFC will be praying that they drop one of those and fall out because if they do get in 11-6, right,
Oh,
that's
if the Chiefs make the play, I just said that this is the most wide open year that we've had in recent memory. It'll be the Chiefs and Eagles again somehow in the Super Bowl. Like that's just the way things work.
or the 49ers, one of the two. We'll find a way to pull the strings for that to happen.
So the Bengals, Joe Burrow returns somehow, and they thump the Ravens on the road on Thanksgiving. That was such a bizarre game. The Ravens continue to not be serious. The Jets, Aaron Glenn and the Jets beat the Falcons. Good for Aaron Glenn. He's kind of at least made the Jets look a little bit passable down the stretch. So good for him. The Dolphins also have turned their season around to at least be passable. They're 5-7 now after beating the Saints. The Niners thump the Browns. Shadur Sanders. The fan club is trying their best to cope, but it not a good situation.
Nope, no surprise in those results. Um, it was a yesterday was a pretty boring day in the NFL, largely speaking, until the Sunday night game, basically. And
Yeah.
if you're watching Red Zone, you got those Rams highlights. Otherwise, it was a pretty dry showing.
Yeah. So the Texans beat the Colts, which means the Jaguars have taken over the AFC South, which is hysterical. This division is so unserious, but
I
I'm
mean,
good for
how
the
are you feeling
Texans.
if you're a Colts fan? How are you feeling right now? And they're 8-4, but they've lost three of the last four, and the remaining schedule at Jags, at Seahawks, Niners, Jags, at Texans.
Feeling like the
Uh-oh.
Bill. Yeah, it feels like all that good luck is coming back around.
Yeah,
The
not feeling too good right now.
The Colts are I saw the splits. I think they're 7-0 when Jonathan Taylor scores a touchdown. They're 1-4 now when he doesn't. It's kind of the Lions dilemma. When they run the ball well, they win. When they don't run the ball well and Daniel Jones has to do it all himself, they lose. Lo and behold.
Well, especially when he's playing on a broken foot or whatever is going on there with
Yeah,
the
fractured
injury.
fibula, I think I saw.
Yeah, with
Bizarre.
broken leg. Yeah, weird.
The Buccaneers are very unconvincing, but they somehow scrape by against the Cardinals. The Cardinals probably better than 3-9 indicates, but tough season for them. Buccaneers, though, they're keeping pace with the Carolina Panthers, who surprise everyone and beat the LA Rams at home. Bryce Young, I think I saw this. It's like the youngest QB to or youngest active QB to have like 11 game winning drives or something. He has randomly Bryce Young is the weirdest quarterback in which he just randomly breaks out these clutch performances every now and again, and good for him. The Panthers, they're 7-6. They're at very least decent, and they could win that division.
You didn't mention the important part of their 7-6 record. They have a minus 50 point differential going along with the 7-6 record.
Well, a
It's
40-9 loss to the Bucks and a 42-13 loss will do that to your point differential.
they're such a weird team. Like each week they could either be going toe to toe with a playoff team or they could look like the 0-16 Lions. Like, and you don't really know which week it is. I mean, this performance against the Rams was this was a really impressive game from them. They looked awesome, and they got some luck in this game. I know that like success rate, they weren't 7.4 to 5.8 yards per play, but they took advantage of a pretty poor Stafford game with the interceptions. But credit to them, like they're kind of like the Broncos in some ways to me, where it wasn't that long ago, and this shows the parity of the NFL, where it wasn't that long ago if you would ask me like which franchises are the most cooked. Like the Broncos when they had Russ seemed like at the top of the
Yeah,
list. And the Panthers, not that long ago, like after the Bryce Young rookie year, felt like they were at the top of their cooked list.
it
And
felt like Dave Tepper was going to just destroy everything he touched.
and here we are. So credit to Dave Canales. He's done a good job with that team. Uh, McMillan's been a nice find for them, helped their offense, and their defense has played pretty well as a whole on the season.
Yep.
They're holding opponents to 330 yards per game and only 22 points. So good job. They have a bye week. And then look, this is on the platter for them. I mean, they got the Saints, should be able to win that. Seahawks at home is tricky, but then it's all on the table. Two games against the Bucks. Go and earn it. Like they
Yep.
they they've got a shot here.
Yep, those are going to be some good games to watch down the stretch. The Speaking of the Seahawks, they beat the Vikings 26 nothing, and what Max Brosmer had one of the welcome to the NFL moments of all time with a under pressure underhand interception pick six that was just that was one of those like you're watching a car crash in real time and you can't look away. Like it was just absolutely horrible to to
Yeah,
witness.
while he was going to the ground, just throwing
What are
that
we
up.
doing?
And
After running backwards 25 yards, like it was
so
just
the Brosmer thing is interesting to me just simply because it reminds me of Tim Boyle a little bit. Now, look, Tim Boyle was a lot worse in college, but it's always surprising to me which guys somehow hang around as court backups in the NFL. And Brosmer's only a rookie, so it's not like he's hung around. But I watched Brosmer at Minnesota in college last year, and I would not have named him a guy that was going to ever play in an NFL game. Like he was an okay Big Ten quarterback. He was good in the FCS before that with New Hampshire. There was nothing to suggest he should ever be playing in a college like an NFL game. And like now he's starting games in the end. Like it's always strange to me who ends up being the guys that make it and get to start games in the NFL quarterback because he that bar is pretty low if Max Brosmer is playing in games. And here we are.
yeah, I mean they I teams are always just so perplexed with the quarterback position that nothing surprises me with with quarterbacks in the NFL no, anymore. I just enjoy seeing the lowlights like we had against the Seahawks on Sunday. And then, like I mentioned earlier, the Broncos escape by the skin of their teeth against the Commanders. They are now 10-2. The Patriots are gonna beat the Giants. It looks like we're recording at halftime of this game. It's 30-7 Patriots right now. So the Patriots are going to win that game and will hold the one seed for another week, but the Patriots have their bye. Broncos and Patriots rule the AFC like it's 2015 again. It's yeah, Broncos are very weird, but good for them, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, you know a lot of Broncos fans, if I understand correctly, being in
Yep.
that part of North America. This is maybe a sign of the Lions being down bad, but when I was a kid, because the Lions were so terrible in the early years of my childhood, like the first 10 years that I was watching, or I was alive, first 5 or so years I was watching football, they never had a chance to be in the playoffs ever. And so you had to find another team to cheer for to make runs in the playoffs and stuff. And I was a Peyton Manning fan. And so I was with him with the Colts. I followed him to the Broncos when he retired. Then that was kind of the end for me with the Broncos. But I'm kind of getting back towards the Broncos a little bit as like a team to cheer for in the playoffs. Like I respect the way their franchises come back, and they've played a lot of really fun games this year. And so I'm kind of riding the bandwagon a little bit. Like I want to see them do well.
They are the champions of chaos in the
Yeah.
AFC, where every game is an adventure. The end of that game
Things
against the
things
Commanders
happen
too.
when they play, and I like that. It's not boring.
It's which is so hilarious because that was the biggest criticism of them like 2 years ago was how boring they are in all their games, but they are the Chaos Kings right now. So good for them. They're gonna hang in with the Patriots and fight for that one seed. Getting back to the Lions, game against the Cowboys on Thursday night. Lions going with a whiteout at home. I obviously must win for the Lions. You can't afford to lose. The Lions are 3-point favorites. I don't even know what. I have zero expectations for the defense at this point. The only sort of optimistic angle I can offer up is maybe Aiden Hutchinson is fueled by how last season ended with his injury against the Cowboys, and historically he has done pretty well against them as a pass rusher. So maybe he can make some magic happen for that defensive front. Maybe the offense just keeps pace with the Cowboys, but I don't know. I don't feel like confident or negative. Like I kind of feel very neutral going into this.
Yeah, this is I don't know, it's one of those things where you looked at the schedule after the Thanksgiving game and sort of said, which of these games remaining are the Lions expected to win? I think the Vikings game clearly. Other than that, I don't know. I mean, the Lions they're a small favorite in this game, I believe.
Yep, three
Yeah, they
points.
3 points. Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't feel good about betting that as just an observer if I was a gambler. I don't really know what to expect about the Lions. They could certainly win this game, but the Cowboy offense has been awesome this whole year. It was really the first half of the season they couldn't get any stops. Now they're getting stops and winning games, but the offense has been there. I mean, 351 points, 29 per game, close to 400 yards a game. Dak has been really terrific, and if he leads the Cowboys into the playoffs somehow, it would require a crazy run to get there. He would have a good shot at the MVP, I think, with the way he's played this season. He'd certainly have a case for it. Um, so from that standpoint, we've seen this defense play better. We know they can stop some teams. I don't have a lot of faith after what we're coming off of, but at the same time, it was only 2 weeks that I jinxed the defense and talked about how good they were during the week after the Eagles game. If that group comes back and they execute a little bit better, it could give them enough stops, and Cowboys defense is certainly improved, but it's not incredible by any stretch. So the Lions offense could, I mean, this is a toss-up game. It should be a close game in the fourth quarter, would be my guess.
It's gonna be a shootout. Like this is going to be a high scoring affair. The Cowboys, they air it out. They're probably going to score points with George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb. The Lions are going to have to keep pace, which it's reasonable to expect that they should be able to. Although Quentin Williams does scare me. I We'll see how well the interior holds up against Kenny Clark and Quentin Williams. Like we'll see. It's another one of these games where it's like it kind of feels like the Giants game in terms of a offense Lions offense versus defense matchup where in theory the Lions should be able to score points, but there are pieces on that defensive line that pose problems.
Yeah, certainly from a matchup standpoint, there are real questions, and this is a dig deep week for the Lions. Like it kind of feels like it's all on the line right here, and we've seen for the most part the Lions respond pretty well in these situations under Campbell, but this has been a very un-Campbell season, and I think you can say in some ways that a significant portion of the season narrative is going to be written in this game. A lot of it's been written, but a good part of it will be written because either they're going to win this game and buy themselves some more time and potentially have a path to the playoffs at the very least. Let's say they lose to the Rams, but then beat the Steelers, beat the Vikings. Now you're going into Chicago in the final week with a shot at a wild card spot. If you lose this game, the
Then
bad
you're,
vibes continue.
yeah.
You seem pretty cooked. You lose to the Rams, you're 7-7. It's over at that point,
Oh yeah.
and the season is very different. So it's all on the line right here.
Yep, everything to play for, everything on the line. This is what you love about football, though. This is like back against the wall. Show me what you got. So I do actually have a little bit of hope for this game that the Lions, they should be playing at their most desperate, and we're gonna see what this team is made of once and for all.
Yeah, it's the only thing that's really good about it is just we're gonna get it. We're gonna get an answer. We're
Yeah.
going to get some resolution to this. Either we buy in for a few more weeks, or we start talking about, draft profiles or whatever in between.
Yeah. So gonna be a good one on Thursday, and again, Lions going white out at home, which that'll be interesting to see. But that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for watching or listening. If you're on a podcasting platform, be sure to hit like and subscribe if you're on YouTube, and leave us a review and follow us if you're on a podcasting platform. You can follow the show on Twitter at Payne and Drain. You can find me at ZachPayne41. You can find Alex at Alex_Drain. And we will be back next week to recap whatever happens on Thursday and preview a matchup with the Rams and our old friend Matt Stafford. So until then, have a good weekend, everyone. Take care. Cheers.